All right, we'll workshop our bet as the day goes on. Yesterday's poll was about whether or not you're okay with Adam Peters trading as much as he has for three veterans. They've given up a ton of picks here in those three swaps. And the vast majority of you were on the side that I've been advocating for, which is, yeah, it's a lot, and it doesn't look great when you give up that many picks in short order, but it was worth it, and you don't have a problem with it. Try to go be great and win some football games with Jaden Daniels. So that brings us to today's poll of the day, which is available now at the 1067 The Fan Twitter account, presented by Metropolitan Moving and Storage, local long-distance residential or commercial, 3 decades of best-in-class service and experience. We're asking you, would you continue the trend of bleeping those picks, getting rid of the selections for the veterans, and trade a first-round pick for Trey Hendrickson? So in this hypothetical, we're talking pick 29 for Trey Hendrickson of the Cincinnati Bengals. This was Albert Breer on our show saying that's what it might take.
The Bengals want a one, but I don't think the one's going to be out there for him because he's 31 years old, and he's going to require a new contract. So I still don't think they would move him for anything less than a 2, though. So you have to make that determination if you're Washington, where, you've already, I don't have it in front of me, but they got what, a 1, a 2, a 4, a 6, and a 7 or something like that,
exactly right? Yeah.
Right. So, you're looking at it if you're them and you're saying, do I really want to deplete myself of another draft pick? I think that's a question. And I think the other thing about it is, if you are the Commanders, you're probably looking at it and saying there's a really deep draft at that position. So we could draft guys with our first 2 picks and potentially hit on starting level players at that position.
So remember, Danny, because they picked 29 at the end of the first round. It's not even a good first-round pick. So it's kind of like a second almost. It's closer to a second than a really good first-round pick, if that makes sense. So I would think that the Bengals, if they want a 1 but would settle for a 2, probably wouldn't love 61 overall, which is almost a 3 at the back of the second round. So if you're Washington, you could part with 29. And in this hypothetical that we're cooking up here on Grant and Danny, live from West Palm Beach as we watch the Nats and the Astros in a spring breakout game on one of the most beautiful days of all time, I'm going to say that the Bengals accept the first rounder and nothing else. It's just 29 for Hendrickson, even though they've already given up a 2, 2 3s, 2 4s, a 5, a 6, and a 7. Would you give up the first and then be down to a 2nd, a 4th, a 6th, and a 7th this year?
Now, I would, but I would add that what this group has done a lot of is some of those pick swaps or some of those, give us back a third so we have a little bit of ammunition to maybe keep moving around the board, et cetera. But that's kind of my point. I don't know what my cutoff is, Jeeps, I don't take the first-round pick as seriously. That's not the right turn of phrase, but you know what I'm trying to say. In other words, 29 is, as you said, basically the second round, the same way that pick 34 is basically the first round. It's that super late, this guy's kind of round 1, round 2. And this draft, et cetera, I mean, there's no, 100% foolproof wisdom, obviously, but conventional wisdom is anybody from that 20 to 50 range, depending on the scout that you talk to or is writing about, you can pretty much shuffle up and deal. So I'm not as diehard for my first round pick if it's normally in the top 10 or the early teens or at where we're used to seeing Washington pick. This is basically a second rounder that I would give up at this point. Because again, this is the route that you're taking to try to then walk it back and go, no, we're building around young players. 1, 2 young players? You're building around Jaden Daniels with a bunch of veterans. And I'm fine with that, by the way. I think that gives you the best chance to win in this rookie quarterback window that you're in. So to me, I'm making that move.
We can open up the listener lines on this at 800-636-1067 because I want to take the temperature of our audience. It's funny, as we undulate day to day, it feels like between, man, they're giving up a lot of picks and would you do this? Because I think both things can be true. Mm-hmm. They are giving up a lot of picks, and it isn't a great practice necessarily. But Adam Peters has shown no indication that he doesn't like doing it. I mean, it's one thing to say you want to build through the draft, and they may feel like they are or will continue to, by the way. But you can simultaneously hit on your draft picks and build a couple players at a time through the draft and still give up plenty of those picks to bring in those veteran free agents or rather, available players in trade opportunities too. So I would do it. I am a little leery and worry about how much they've given up, but I think it's case by case. And part of why I say I would give up a first-round pick for Trey Hendrickson is, you tell me, where's your edge coming from? Because right now that answer would be you're picking a guy at 29. Well, if it's a straight-up swap, 29 could be, let's say James Pierce falls to you. Bit of a flyer, guy that didn't put up huge college numbers, but he's a physical specimen and a beast, right? So you can either have Hendrickson, who's had 35 sacks the last 2 years and is one of the best edges in the National Football League over a 3-year span. And yes, he costs over $30 million a year. Or Pierce on a rookie deal, but it's the same pick. It's just one pick. It's not like you're giving up. It's not 2 or 3 players you could have taken. And I'm not even convinced that they have the ability now to stick at 29 anyway. They may have to trade back just to recoup selections as it is. So they may not be able to get a first-round edge. Their defensive player that they draft to start on the outside up front might actually be in the late second round. And now you're talking about someone who might get you 4.5 or 5 sacks as a rookie. So because the free agency well's drying up, they pick as late as they do, I think you're staring down the barrel of having a substandard defensive end situation. And that's why if there's the possibility of the Bengals calling you saying, Hendrickson's yours for 29, and it only takes the one pick, I actually think it would be a mistake and a bad decision by Peters not to jump on it.
What people are going to do is they're going to recoil because you hear, as soon as you see the phrase first round pick, people automatically will start clutching it, right? Because we've been conditioned over so many years as commodities and stats and analytics and the pocket protector squads, of which you and I are part of, have taken over sports to such a degree.
But they're not all equal.
And this is my point. This is where I'm going. Is you have to keep them. They're so valuable. It's so valuable. I mean, you think of how Major League Baseball rosters are constructed. It's like, any team that's not going to win 100 games, every owner and every GM is basically like, we're going to spend the absolute bare minimum on a bunch of 21 and 22-year-olds for 1/10 of the cost of the 30-year-old veteran and win 15 less games. And we're fine with that eventually with the idea that we're really good. You look at the NBA kind of doing something similar with rebuilding franchises. So these first-round picks, to a degree, not up at the top with a chance to get a quarterback, but for the most part, they become this larger-than-life automatic secret sauce where if you have your first-round pick, that automatically makes you good, and that's not the case. The whole point, again, that I keep coming back to is you are building the best roster you can, and you use every lever at your disposal. This is one used in an unconventional way.
See, I don't even think people would be bothered by giving up a 1 for Hendrickson. I think the problem they'd have now is how many other picks they've given up. So in other words, if you didn't make the Lattimore trade or the Tunsil trade, which the Tunsil trade to me, I loved. And I will continue to love. I think it's great. The Lattimore trade, which I liked at the time, could backfire. I mean, right now it's been bad, and there's a lot of ball out in front of him where it could end up being a good deal. But both he and Deebo Samuel, I think, are higher risk propositions than Tunsil, who worst case is just going to be a very solid tackle for you for the next couple of years. Best case ends up playing at a top 5 level and looks like an elite player at the position. But I'm looking at any kind of disdain for a first for Hendrickson from the perspective that a fan is going, you don't have that luxury anymore. Like, you can't spend any more money, Danny, because you just went on vacation and you just sent your kid to college and you just did your trip with your wife. Like, you have to now do a spending freeze. Adam Peters, you've already given up a 2, 2 3s, 2 4s, a 5, a 6, and a 7. You don't get to give up a 1, 2. I think that's where maybe we'd get some pushback. But if you're not okay with it, then tell me where you're getting your edge from. And if you're saying at 29, that's just such a crapshoot that guy ends up being really good.
I mean, he might.
Sure.
I mean, I like James Pierce a lot from Tennessee. So if he's there, okay, great. But now you go, are you really counting on that? What if 7 teams in front of you all have the Steamies and Mike Green from Marshall goes and Pierce goes, and now you're going, whoops, I was supposed to draft one. Now I can't.
But even if you take the guy you want, what I'm saying is being great in 2 or 3 years is awesome. The way they're putting together this offseason, it's pretty important to them that this person helps them right away. Like, they're in some ways going for it this year. How sure are you about that?
Mm-hmm.
There's a guy with 15+ sacks waiting in the wings. He could be yours pretty easily if you want him. 800-636-1067 is how you can get a hold of us. Grant and Danny, we are live in West Palm Beach watching the Nats spring breakout game today at the Cacti Park of the Palm Beaches. This is The Fan.